Shabbat Shalom to everyone. I offer this message, as I always do, with a sense of open-heartedness, and I would pray that you would receive this message with open-heartedness. There is nothing that is more important than having friends. Friends are those people who know us, who care for us, who understand us, laugh with us, cry with us, make fun of us, listen to us, forgive us, and tell us the truth even when it hurts. We Jewish people need friends, and we at times worry that we don't have any. And why do we take that position? Because of the precarious nature of Jewish history. We have often felt alone, unprotected. And in our world today, we want to know what groups will stand by us, what politicians will look out for our interest, what nations will stand firm to protect the Jewish people living in their society. And of course, we want people to be able to stand with our right to a Jewish homeland. Tomorrow will be Pope Francis's funeral, and Jews are reflecting upon his life and his legacy. And I'm not going to do, just a big footnote, I'm not going to get in a critique of everything that he's done or hasn't done, and every theological position he's taken and hasn't taken, and what our disappointment, that's not what this is about. It's irrelevant. We're going to keep that out of here. Not because it isn't important, but that's not the purpose of what I'm doing here. Jews are reflecting upon his life and asking, was he a friend of the Jews? Francis, in my opinion, was a big friend of the Jews. I have no doubt that if a Jew came to his door for refuge, he would find a refuge there. If Jews showed up on the steps of the Vatican needing protection, he would open the doors, would allow them to sleep in the Sistine Chapel, and would make sure that they would have kosher food. He has provided kosher food in the Vatican. I have no doubt that if they were rounding up the Jews again, he would tell every church on this planet to welcome the Jews and to refuse at all costs the agents of the state coming for the Jews in their churches. What is my evidence for this? His entire life. As the Bishop of Buenos Aires, he had a strong, loving relationship with the Jewish community. In fact, he wrote this incredible book. I once referenced it before. Like everything else, there's no Jewish book that I haven't bought 3 times. This is his book he wrote, obviously before he was the Pope, called On Heaven and Earth, and he wrote it with one of his closest friends, Rabbi Abraham Skorka of Argentina. Under his leadership, the church made ongoing efforts to uphold the principles of Nostra Aetate in our time, which was promulgated in 1965, which called for mutual respect and dialogue between Christians and Jews and to combat anti-Semitism and anti-Judaism. On February 2nd, 2024, 4 months after the October massacre, he wrote this letter to my Jewish brothers and sisters in Israel. And I had to excerpt it. It's broader than this, and if anyone wants a copy of it, either you can go on the Vatican website or get it, and if I'm in a very generous mood, I will give you a free copy of it. This is what he said. Unfortunately, however, it must be noted that in public opinion worldwide, this war has also produced divisive attitudes, sometimes taking the form of anti-Semitism and anti-Judaism. I can only reiterate what my predecessors also clearly stated many times. The relationship that binds us to you is particular and singular without ever obscuring naturally the relationship that the church has with others and the commitment towards them too. The path that the church has undertaken with you, the ancient people of the covenant, rejects every form of anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism, unequivocally in condemning manifestations of hatred toward Jews and Judaism as a sin against God. Together with you, we Catholics are very concerned about the terrible increase in attacks against Jews around the world, and we had hoped that never again would be a refrain heard by the new generations. Yet now we see that the path ahead requires ever closer collaboration to eradicate these phenomena. In 2016, he visited the great synagogue in Rome, and there's a famous, I've read to you before and years ago, the statement that Pope John Paul II offered at this synagogue. But this is what Pope Francis said at the synagogue in 2016. He said, "Our relationships are very close to my heart. When in Buenos Aires I used to go to the synagogues and meet the communities gathered there, I used to follow Jewish festivities and commemorations and give thanks to the Lord who gives us life and accompanies us on the path of history. Over time, a spiritual bond has been created, which has favored the birth of a genuine friendship and given life to a shared commitment. In interreligious dialogue, it is essential that we meet as brothers and sisters before our Creator and to Him give praise, that we respect and appreciate each other and try to collaborate. In Jewish-Christian dialogue, there is a unique and special bond thanks to the Jewish roots of Christianity. Jews and Christians must therefore feel as brothers, united by the same God and by a rich common spiritual patrimony." In the same year, 2016, the pontiff made a historic visit to Auschwitz-Birkenau in Poland. Francis spent most of the visit in silence, we are told. In just 1 year into his papacy, in 2014, Francis visited Israel and the Palestinian territories, offering symbolic gestures of goodwill to both sides of the decades-long conflict. While in the Jewish state, he visited Yad Vashem and the grave of Theodor Herzl, the father of modern Zionism and the Western Wall. The relationship was not without missteps and tension, and that is what happens between friends. Last year, in the unveiling of the nativity scene gifted to the Vatican, the Church and Pope was criticized from both Catholic and Jewish groups for having a keffiyeh, the Palestinian traditional scarf that is associated with resistance, draped across baby Jesus' cradle. I'm sure some of you saw that picture. The Vatican expressed regret over the controversial incident and issued an apology. In my opinion, it was maybe a lack of judgment and not hatred of Jews and Judaism. I think Jews went way overboard in that. In the aftermath of October 7 atrocity, Francis condemned Hamas's led attacks as an atrocious act of terror and wrote, "He following apprehensively and sorrowfully what is happening in Israel." And he defended a few days later the right of those who had attacked to defend themselves, but expressed concern about the total siege under which the Palestinians are living in Gaza. He called then and throughout the war for an immediate ceasefire and for the hostages in Gaza to be released. He invited several families of hostages to the Vatican to meet with him, and also Palestinians from Gaza who had been afflicted by the war. And in his last book, Francis wrote, in his last book entitled Hope Never Disappoints, Pilgrims Towards a Better World, this is what he wrote. According to some experts, what is happening in Gaza has the characteristics of a genocide. It should be carefully investigated to determine whether it fits into the technical definition formulated by jurists and international bodies. I don't see these words as anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, or anti-Zionist. I read them as words of a global religious voice of conscience that is concerned that children are being killed, that people are homeless, that proper medical care is not available, and that water is contaminated. Of course, we don't have to go over again and again how Hamas is evil, and also that Israel's soldiers keep dying. But how are these concerns wrong or improper? Many Israelis are asking the same thing as many of us are. Isn't it required for the Pope and for all Jews to be concerned about the death of innocents? Rabbi David Rosen of the American Jewish Committee put it this way, and I quote, "For us, there is a clear connection between the reaction of October 7th and the Israel's legitimate right to self-defense and anti-Semitism around the world. Francis didn't see it like that. For him, they were two separate things. He felt that all violence is bad, which is why he continually called for an immediate ceasefire. His words and actions were one of a person of deep faith, conscience, and compassion, not a hater of the Jews. Friends are supposed to ask hard questions, even when they hurt and make us uncomfortable. Did Pope Francis always use the right words? Did he always get it right? No, and who does? And of course, we have a right to respond to statements that trouble us, but if we take Catholic-Jewish relationships seriously, and they have matured over the last 70 years, and we see it as a true friendship, there are going to be differences of perspective. There are going to be arguments. There are going to be conflicts and misunderstandings, but a relationship endures those things. Of course, we Jews want to know who are our friends. But I'm concerned that we Jews have taken the division of the world between friends and foe to its absurd conclusion. If we cannot disagree as friends, there's no friendship. We could say we have no friends, and I'm not willing to take that path. That takes us towards the abyss, a place where we do not want to go and from which we cannot come back. Let Pope Francis's gentleness, his humility, his honesty, his compassion, his intellect, his love, his fallibility, his flaws be honored. He loved the God of Israel and its people. He honored our special covenant with God. He knew Jews as friends, and we often felt his friendship. All humanity is diminished by his passing, and I pray that the Church will select a new pope of his character, love, and affection for the Jewish people. Shabbat Shalom.